take the high road and I take the low road and I reached Scotland Yard before you. Anyway, hey guys, welcome back to the Bucket Think Tank for a special review today. Part of our Disney Comics retrospective here. We're going to cover a very unique title here. I was spending a lot of time really thinking about which one to do. Because if you recall, last time we were here, we did a review on The Statuesque Spendthrift. A really great, fun story, a bit personal for me, one of my earliest Barks, let alone Uncle Scrooge stories. So I'm thinking, what next? Well, the obvious choice would be another Barks story or a Rosa story. But then I found this. The Dragon of Glasgow by Josie Chamberlain. Alright? And also, for our fun little Funko, we have we have Uncle Scrooge, of course, Scrooge McDuck. This is the DuckTales 2017 Reboot 1. Is that really appropriate for a Don Rosa-esque book? Probably not really, but I don't really have another one. But it is what it is. So anyway. So why did I pick this story here? Well, so Joris Chamberlain had a very interesting approach here. So first of all, we already know that we did our Life of Scrooge video retrospective here. A series we're probably definitely going to redo at some point. Alright, because we have learned a lot more about how to go about that sort of thing. And it might be a bit more fun. We'll probably do something like this, but a bit more rapid fire, a bit quicker. And so instead of redoing that already, I decided, you know what, let's find this. I just happened to find this by accident, and I was a bit apprehensive. Not the art. The art style is actually pretty good. I like it. It was because the way it sounded was we were trying to play in the Don Rosa sandbox, which is totally great. Because I think that is a great take on Scrooge's origin. It was never intended to be the definitive origin. It's like Rosa himself said, hey, this is my little fanboy project. Take it or leave it. But most people like it, so whatever. What it did sort of made it sound like Scrooge himself would be the Dragon of Glasgow. The sort of legendary hero or whatnot. I'm like, that? It's not really Scrooge. But anyway, let's sort of talk about this story here. So it starts off with a story of a girl who falls down into a mine. And as she pulls herself out, she finds the Dragon of Glasgow. And what happens then? Well, it turns out this is a play Huey, Dewey, and Louie are doing for their uncle. Alright? And they did this because, well, he's so busy working, running a world empire, going on adventures, that he doesn't have time to always be there to see everything they do, so they put on a little show for him. And I love this take on the money bin. This is an adaptation of a Barks work, if I'm not mistaken. I can't quite place the name, but the sort of money bin going, the vault door going into more of the money bin, really great. So, Dewey shows Scrooge the pamphlet that this is based off of, and talking about the Dragon of Glasgow. And Scrooge shows it to him, like, hey, this was around the time when you were a kid. Do you know anything about the Dragon of Glasgow? Scrooge even sees the picture of the girl, and he says, Erin. And so they're like, do you know Erin? Do you know this girl? Scrooge's like, I don't know anything about it. Just get out. I'm done here. I hate theater. Always have. Always will. And we have another weird moment. This is an image of the 87 DuckTales money bin. Not something you'd see in something centered in the Rosa universe. So it seems we're playing with a bit of everything here. Now, to be fair, I love the simplistic design of the Barks and Rosa money bin. I really do. But there's always a special place in my heart for this money bin, which to me is the original money bin. It's not canonically speaking, let alone in terms of which one came first. But from someone coming off of DuckTales, it's always nice to see this money bin. The worst money bin is still the D17 money bin. That is just terrible. But anyway. So, Huey, Dewey, and Louie are a bit upset because, like, hey, what's going on? Uncle Scrooge didn't tell us anything, but he seems to know something. So Donald's like, well, if it happened around that time, then maybe Great Aunt Matilda knows something. Remember, Matilda McDuck is Scrooge's sister, all right? His second youngest sister after Hortense, i.e. Donald's mother. So they write to Matilda. Matilda writes back and says, I got a story for you. And this is where it gets interesting because now we're hearing a story told from Matilda's perspective. And we don't get a lot from Matilda, really. She's always been sort of the wallflower of the family. She's sort of been in between Scrooge and Hortense's temperament, which is very fiery at times. So I think really she takes after their mother. But whatever. Also, this is an image too. In the bottom right panel, that's another image from. I should really just bother to find this. But anyway. So Matilda tells the story, and the whole thing feels like Stand By Me by Stephen King. Like this story being told from the perspective of one of the kids back in maybe the Bridge to Terabithia, depending on how you want to go with it. But anyway, so this story starts off with Scrooge finally taking Matilda down to the coal mine. All right, and they talks about how it looks like a dragon, and okay, so apparently the mine is quote unquote the dragon. Does it look like a dragon? Sort of, really, especially at the top of the head and the smoke. So that's cool. So anyway, Scrooge takes Matilda down, and Matilda has a very important job. She has to stand watch for old Stink Damp. All right, and the Stink Damp is the local tough. All right, he's also the son of the man that owns the mine. So we're going there. Scrooge goes in, gets their friends, so that way they can sneak her in through the front. It's sort of weird, but it's pretty much your standard. This is their default clubhouse, all right. And they go through. They go there. They're pretty much going there to play and explore and whatnot, as you do when you're the latchkey kids. So it's really fun, really simple. These childhood friends don't really matter, so you can give them names. There's Snuffy, Al, Leo, Little Mo with a gimpy leg, Boney Bob, Cheeks, Cliff, Charlie Brown, Linus, Grady, Bubba, as you do. There's probably a David in there, and probably some dude named Todd. Anyway, so really this sets up the sort of life that Matilda's describing about Scrooge and their childhood. They were not the most well-off. Actually, they were pretty poor, but they were all pretty poor at the time, so it works, sort of. They go out, they play in the mines, and they come back and enjoy life. At night, Mom tells them stories, and one night, Matilda talks about how she's afraid that she'll have to work in the mine. And Scrooge goes, "It's all right. I'll slay the Dragon of Glasgow before that ever happens." And it's a great moment, and sort of shows, I think, a really great moment for Scrooge that, first and foremost, he always likes to look after his sisters. Great thing, great feeling. Really helps you endear to the kind of person Scrooge was and still is to an extent. And I think it speaks more about seeing how Scrooge sort of connects with Huey, Dewey, Louie, as well as Donald in the coming years. But anyway, so we go through there, and we get more of a conversation as to their day-to-day life. So they're not well off, but they have a great community. So there's a bread lady that gives them leftover bread. There's a retired teacher that goes to teach them, and there's a crazy old inventor who always finds something for Scrooge and company to do. So that's nice. It shows that Scrooge has always had a history for dealing with crazy inventors. Ratchet, Gearloose, and I believe Ratchet is Gyro's father, if I'm not mistaken, or grandfather, one of those two. So that's kind of fun. He goes and says, "Hey, I've got something to take to the local playhouse. You want to come?" So they go, they deliver it, and this is where the story really sort of kicks in. So Scrooge and Matilda watch a play go off, and they're really interested, really excited about it. And before they're caught, they run off, and something about it intrigues Scrooge. So the next day, he goes off like, "Hey, Matilda, don't tell anybody where I'm going, but where I'm going, I gotta go alone." So he sneaks off to the playhouse, and he watches from the rafters. And this is when it all happens. He falls down. He meets the girl from the playhouse, and they stare. He's goofy and awkward. She says her name is Erin. And they sort of bond. They sort of connect. And it's really interesting to see that. This is possibly Scrooge's first real friend, or his first lady friend. It's an interesting avenue to play in, because for the most part with Scrooge's life, the only woman consistently in his life that isn't Hortense, Matilda, or his mother is Glitter and Goldie. So here we are playing with this one. So then we get to something due to Scrooge sneaking in. He makes a light fall down, a chandelier fall. So he offers to work at the playhouse to sort of earn that back. Also with the promise of not telling his mom what he did. So sort of works out. So Scrooge tells Matilda, and Matilda sort of helps bring this back from her perspective. She does see that Scrooge really is interested in theater, but also maybe interested in Erin. All right. And Matilda feels a bit jealous, like her big brother can do no wrong. He's a great hero. He looks after her, so she's a bit jealous to see someone else sort of carve out a spot for her in Scrooge's life. But she also can't help but like Erin. She's smart. She's friendly. She's witty. She's not afraid of old Stink Damp. All right, which is, I love that name. I love that name. So everything goes fine. They even take Erin to the clubhouse in the mine, and they have a fun adventure there. They explore it, and when Erin goes home, old Stink Damp is still salty about getting the old one up. So he follows Erin home and finds her father and goes, oh, "I know who she is." And so he waits until the night of the play. So there's a play being held at the mine to sort of help foster community and whatnot, and also get attention for the mine. So Scrooge has been rehearsing for this. They are doing Romeo and Juliet, which is an interesting choice. So Scrooge is a bit nervous, like this is his first real play, all right, and he's got some friends who are laughing at him, giggling, but Scrooge takes it in stride. His parents were a bit skeptical, but yeah, kid's pretty good. Kid's pretty good. And it's all going well and fine and beautiful until old Stink Damp comes in. Also, by the way, I'm redoing this video because I've been mispronouncing his name. I keep calling him Stinkadamp. It's just Stink Damp. Gold to me. But anyway, so Stink Damp comes in and makes a stink and points out that Erin has been lying to everyone. Erin's last name is Whiskerville. And for those of you that don't know, the Whiskervilles are the long-hated enemy of Clan McDuck. We're talking Hatfields and McCoys. We're talking the Montagues and the Capulets. We're talking Bugs and Daffy, Batman fans and Goku fans. It's just the worst. The worst. Literally the worst. But anyway. So it all comes tumbling down. The whole atmosphere is ruined. Fergus has no patience for this. He's come to take Scrooge home. Like, you know what? This is done. We're out of here. You are not playing with that child. All right? So it goes off because that's how bone deep the hatred is. All right? That regardless of how much fun he saw Scrooge having, this is done. And Scrooge has no idea about any of that clan hatred. All right? So he's just like, I don't want to hear about it. And he runs off. And Erin tries to call him back. And Fergus will not even look at Erin. Begone! The air here is foul with the stench of Whiskerville. And the whole play's ruined. There we go. So Scrooge hangs out in the mine for a bit to cool himself and calm down, and he's met by Stink Damp's father, who says, like, your dad, he meant well, all right? He just wants you to be safe. He wants you to be okay. And, the Whiskerville thing, really sensitive topic. Real sensitive topic for him, all right? And he talks about how, this mine is so important to the town, and it's so important that, he has to sort of let things go, and even more so, he has to, at some point, will have to employ women to work at the mine, too, because the mine's getting narrower and smaller. But also that he can't have Scrooge and his friends playing around in there, because if something happens to them, the mine will have to be shut down, it'll never recover from it. So it's a really sad moment. And honestly, this is sort of where the story in my mind sort of falls down a bit, because I don't think it ever really plays up properly to the rest of the story. But whatever. What matters is the mine, the status of the mine, and really Scrooge sort of understanding that his dad's just trying to do what's best. So Scrooge then, before he goes home, he finds Erin and he talks to her, sort of reenacting the balcony scene from Romeo and Juliet. And Scrooge says, "Did you know that I was a McDuck?" And he says, "I didn't really know, but she also knew what would happen, if they found out she was in Whiskerville, because her dad told her everything." All right, and I wonder if that means that he told her that the Hound was a fake. All right, maybe, possibly. Scrooge says, he doesn't really care about that, but she says, "You will, because your dad's going to tell you everything just like my dad told me." And Scrooge sort of dives in, like, Aaron, farewell, Aaron Whiskerville. Hope we don't meet again. And and he goes to meet his dad, and his dad's like just happy he's all right. And Scrooge understands like what his dad wants. Like, you want to take me to Castle McDuck tomorrow, and like, yeah, we'll go. And so they go. And what's an interesting moment here is this whole thing pretty much takes place in the life of Scrooge, Last of the Clown McDuck. Right here is where these two stories converge. All right, so here Matilda says, so Papa took Scrooge to Castle McDuck the next day, and after that, Fergus is building a shoeshine kit for Scrooge, hoping that he'll make something of himself, and Scrooge overhears a lot of this, and he's hearing say maybe he'll make the clan McDuck respectable again. He's the last hope. And Matilda knows this is a lot of pressure for Scrooge. And to me, it reminds me of that scene in Avatar: Last Airbender: The Storm, when 12-year-old Aang is in front of his mentors, and they're looking at him saying, "We need you, Aang." I'm like, he's 12. Doesn't matter if he's the Avatar. He's a 12-year-old kid. And a bunch of adults are expecting him to save the world. His dad, his uncle, the two people he respects in the world are saying, he's our last hope. It's either going to build you up or frighten the hell out of you. And so things progress as it does. So in other words, Scrooge will get an American coin, totally by accident, no real plan, courtesy of Bert the Ditch Digger, which motivates him to be tougher than the toughies and sharper than the sharpies, and he'll make it square. And he sells firewood, peat moss, all of that, and every now and then he'll go visit Castle McDuck. And over the course of the time here, Scrooge is thinking of going somewhere else, thinking of going to America. But there's a problem. So the eventual time has come. Scrooge's mother has to work at the coal mine. And Scrooge doesn't want his mom to go work at the coal mine. First of all, the coal mine's dangerous. And also, it's their mom. They want to spend more time with their mom. And Scrooge realizes that at some point that means that Hortense and Matilda will have to work in the coal mine too. And he made sure, and he promised that would never happen. So Scrooge is looking at the fact that there is at this paper, there's a cabin boy being wanted on a ship to New Orleans, chance to go to America, a whole world of opportunity. But Scrooge still has an obligation to his family. He has to, namely his sisters, he has to fix. He doesn't want them to work in the mine. So while talking to Hortense, he gets an idea. Okay, so something happens, like thoughts of a dragon in Glasgow, dragon in the mine, and Scrooge goes through life, rest of his days in Glasgow before he goes off to America. And so when next you see me, Papa, I'll be a rich man. And everyone's happy and sad at the same time. On their way, Matilda sees Erin, and Erin says, "Well, I guess you want to know what happened." So Erin says that at one point, with the whole Dragon of Glasgow thing, Erin was the girl. All right, she and Stink Damp found the dragon in the mines, and she reveals what happened. That dragon was actually Scrooge, and our wacky inventor. This whole plan was to make the mine important, make the mine significant, so they wouldn't need to hire women to work it, i.e. his sisters wouldn't have to work in the mine. And this is why Erin agreed to it, because they both love Matilda, both care about Matilda. They don't want her to work here. So they use the science, the little invention of the dragons, Stink Damp as a witness. So she goes in, Erin makes the ruckus, and everyone hears about the Dragon of Glasgow. And so at this time, Erin is also leaving Glasgow to go to the opera company, to a theater company. I said opera company like I knew something. To the theater company to become a professional actress. And Scrooge is on the way to America. So our two friends leave, never to see each other again, but with this great memory and even a greater secret between them, uniting them despite the history of their family. So the next night, the big, our present day, they do the story of the Dragon of Glasgow. The play begins, it's all fun and whatnot, and this is actually my favorite part of the whole book. So as they watch it, Donald looks up into the rafters, and he sees a shadowy silhouette. It's Scrooge, watching from above, holding a picture of him and Erin all those years ago. And that's how the comic ends. So, I love this comic. It's not perfect, to be sure. Like I said, There's some choices made in the middle that don't quite stick, but there's something to be said about playing in this wheelhouse. In the same way that I think Rosa sort of does when he approaches Bart's continuity, which is all over the place. He says, okay, well, so we've got this here. Let's explore this part a bit, but we can't go that far. A good example would be, I forget the name of the story. Was it called Heart of the Klondike? Was it? So anyway, in a lot of, Rosa really loves Scrooge and Goldie. He loves it. It's his OTP. I don't care what he says. It's his one true pairing. And he's very much a stickler for Barks' continuity when it's there. And in Barks' continuity, Scrooge and Goldie only meet that one time. They have that one adventure in Back to the Klondike. Okay, so Rose is like, well, I want to do more with Goldie, but I can't do much with her. All right, because she and Scrooge can't meet, because according to Barks, they never did meet outside of those 30 days they spent in White Agony Creek. So he told one story about the time in White Agony Creek, and then he told another story where the two of them never actually meet. It's a whole story. It's insane. It's great, and the two of them never meet. It's about the two of them. All right. There's a letter Goldie writes. She sees Scrooge, like they see each other, but they never say a word to each other, because as soon as that happens, Scrooge gets knocked out, and it's a very heartfelt moment in another story, and it really sort of leads to this mystery of what could have been, because then you go to Last Sled to Dawson, and there's something really sweet and beautiful about that. Here, Joris goes with the idea, well, Barks doesn't do much with Scrooge's childhood. Rose did the Life of Scrooge story, and that's great. It's a tight story, but we can probably play around with it. So, the time frame of events in the first chapter of Life of Scrooge, Last of Dragon McDuck, isn't a straight line. It's not day to day to day to day. There's technically all these jumps in time. So, for example, the story starts on the eve of Scrooge's 10th birthday, so the day before. Then the story jumps ahead, maybe a couple days, after he gets the shoe shine kit. Then it just goes like this montage, like, hey, Scrooge was rejuvenated. He would shine shoes on the docks. He saved up enough. It actually says in a few years he saved enough to buy a horse and cart where he would sell firewood. And then when that didn't quite work, he sold peat moss, and he would keep selling it. And essentially, the Life of Scrooge starts off with the day before Scrooge's 10th birthday, and he leaves at 13 to go to America. So there's a 3-year gap in between those events. So the Dragon of Glasgow takes place pretty much in that entire story. All right, it starts before the events of the beginning of the life of Last of Dragon McDuck, and then it ends. Then the whole story takes place. The rest of the story takes place in between those events, and it's really great because I think he does a good job playing with it. He tries to set some things up. Like, there's some really good stuff in here in regards to our continuity and namely Last of Dragon McDuck. We got a lot of fun ideas being played with here. We see the ditch digger scene, which is there. We see the scene from Castle McDuck, which is a great scene. And again, these sort of montages from getting a horse and cart to the peat moss to the... this is an interesting thing to hear too. So Scrooge has an appreciation for theater. It's a really fun niche thing you wouldn't think of Scrooge, but when you think about it, once you hear he has had some sort of history with the theater, you then go to something like this. So they did a story a little bit earlier where Scrooge's mother does a thing with a little puppet show, and then we see it again with his little theater. So he loves how to create a show. As a matter of fact, this is like low-key referenced in the comic itself that this happened, and I like to think it doesn't say it with any real certainty, but I think Scrooge did sort of pick up a trick about theatrics and how to sell a story in combination from his mother and Erin, and I think that is an interesting way to sort of play with how Scrooge sort of thinks about it. Like, he's not a theatrical person. Scrooge is not someone who over-dramatizes and makes big moving speeches. He's not a drama queen, really. but he is someone who has an appreciation for presentation. All right, and he's a very creative person. So I think this does sort of work. It sort of lends credence to it. When Scrooge wants to make an impression, he wants to make a big impression. And I am invincible. I am doom itself. Technically, I'm more dramatic than Scrooge. It sort of works. One thing I do like about this story, I like a lot about this story, is how it does sort of play around with his perspective of it being Matilda who tells the story. All right, Matilda, who we said earlier, is sort of like the wallflower of the trio. But in a lot of ways, she is the perfect person to tell the story. Because no one really likes Scrooge as much as Matilda. No one looks up to Scrooge as much as Matilda, save Huey, Dewey, and Louie. And then you come into the Castle's Other Secret or Letters from Home, and to see Matilda so distraught, and not really distraught, but so disappointed in the person Scrooge has become, that is, I think, a really great moment. Especially because of a story like this. So there's that. Is there anything else I want to mention? This whole thing makes Scrooge to be Carson from Downton Abbey, and I kind of love that. I really do. This whole idea that Scrooge had this whole other life in the theater, and he doesn't like to talk about it. It's just this bad memory. But there was some good parts to it. Like, did Scrooge have a crush on Erin? Maybe, possibly, not really. Maybe he did see something in Erin that he could relate to. All right, or maybe it was the theater and Erin was able to personify that, this whole other avenue. All right, I don't think Scrooge ever regrets the path he's chosen, but I think there was a time when Scrooge could have been the greatest actor Glasgow would ever see. Or maybe not, who knows? Maybe I was like, you know what? Maybe I should just direct. Anyway, that's enough of this. Let's bring this to a close. If you are new to the Bucket Thanks, feel free to like, comment, share, subscribe. Check out some other videos. Smash the thumbs up button. I will catch you all later. This is the Bucket Think Tank signing off. Thanks for watching. As always, may your fandom serve you well.